सदाशिवसमारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम्. Om. So, namaste everyone. Today we'll be doing the second session of the second module of Essentials of Dharma. And let's just get started. We'll begin with a Mangalacharan. Ratnakara Dhauta Padam Himalaya Kiritinim Brahma Rajarshi Ratnadhyam Vande Bharata Mataram. Om. So, I'd just like to have one volunteer, if somebody would just like to lead out for us. We should begin with an invocation to Adi Shankaracharya as well. So let's just take a moment to reflect on this passage, and we can then start. Smitaji, are you planning to read or? Okay.
No, I can read, no problem.
Yeah, go ahead.
Should I?
Yeah, please.
Okay. Adi Shankaracharya was one of India's greatest luminaries who rediscovered the teachings of Shastra. He was an enlightened soul who taught about the falsity of creation and unfolded the nature of the spirit as truth, light and bliss. He shed light on the inseparable relationship between the supreme and the elusive world. He gave us insight into the self by inviting us to directly experience it. Adi Shankaracharya taught us that only by realizing the self one can realize God and attain salvation. Could you scroll up?
This is actually a presentation, so it'll be hard to do that, but the rest says, may his soul rest in peace and the positive vibrations he created also carry forward in our lives. Hari Om. So, if we could reflect on this passage for a minute, like what are some of the thoughts that you derive?
Spirit as truth.
So let me rephrase the question. Do you find everything correct in this passage? Would you like to change anything?
Well, the word salvation, as per Puja Swamiji says, it's not the right word that we use.
Very good.
And realizing, you already realized. So one can realize God, it says. So that's an error.
And the other one is, may his soul rest in peace.
Yeah, wonderful. So let's take a look at, these are all the problems. So, first of all, enlightened soul, we don't use these words. Falsity, creation, spirit, truth, light, bliss, supreme, elusive world, experience with regards to the self, realization, spirit again, God, salvation, rest in peace. All of these are problems. This whole passage was problematic. So to me, if somebody wrote this passage, it would like jump through and, I'd want to erase it out of existence. So this is the incorrect translation of all of these words. So let's get rid of that. And here's the correct one. So, we replace, let's just compare it side to side actually. So enlightened soul is incorrect. What we are supposed to use is Jivan Mukta. The world is not false, right? Mithya is not false. And Shrishti is not creation. So that's another error that people commonly commit. And when we talk about the Atma, certainly Atma is not spirit. And, one of the words that Pujya Swamiji was always averse to was bliss. So many times people translate Ananda as bliss, which is also incorrect. So we'll see each of these words as we go ahead. And, he was also against the usage of redundant adjectives such as supreme. Because if we use a word like supreme, we say supreme God, then is there some God that is not supreme? And therefore the entire adjective is redundant in that sense. Another word that is redundant is he is a good sadhu. So sadhu by definition is a person who is supposed to be good. And so if you say there's a good sadhu, you're also implying that there might be a sadhu who is bad or not so good. So these words are tricky, but they have to be utilized in the correct manner to convey the right meaning. And sometimes when we use words redundantly, then it not only dilutes the meaning, but it may provide an opportunity for somebody to derive an extra meaning out of it which may not be intended. So this is just something that I wanted to put forward. Another thing is that I see that since all of your icons are displayed underneath, it may cover some of the screen. So it's something that I cannot do much about, but please bear with it. So this was just a welcome drink, it was an introduction, a trailer for what is to come. So let's actually start our module now.
Hello, Prashant.
Yeah, Shashiji. Namaste.
I just want to share with people how they can hide those icons on the top. If you go on the top screen, there is a left-hand side that says Show Participants. You click on that, it will unhide them or hide them.
Okay. So yeah. Is it okay? Wonderful, wonderful. Is everybody able to hide it now, based on what Shashiji taught? So as you go up, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 icons. The one that is the leftmost, if you click on it, which looks like a rectangle with a small square in the center. So, okay. Thank you, Shashiji. That's something I didn't know earlier. So here are the modules we'll be covering. We've already seen this in the last session. Establishing identity, lost in translation, which is what we're doing today. Debunking misconceptions, reversing the gaze, Hindu contributions to the world, Dharma as the universal order, the witch hunt for Hindus, and a new Hindu renaissance. So we've already covered the first one in the previous session. And today we'll be looking at lost in translation. So there we go. Now, one may wonder that what is the whole essence behind this? Like, what is the point? Why is it so important to use words accurately? So let's take a look at that. When we refer to the Vedas, we also call them Shruti. So Shruti is that which was heard by the rishis, something that they intuited. And therefore, that implies that, the words are important because Shruti is consisting of the words that were intuited by the rishis. And the Vedas are also called a Shabda Pramana, knowledge that is transmitted through the medium of sound. And if we recall the word pramana, a pramana is a means of knowledge. And the Vedas are a means of knowledge through the transmission of sound, Shabda. So therefore they are called a Shabda Pramana. Shravanam, or listening, is a stage when the Shishya studies under the Guru. So, a quick recap again to all these Tattvabodha topics. When we talk about Shravanam, Mananam and Nididhyasanam, they constitute what we refer to as Jnana Yoga. And Shravanam is a stage where you listen. Mananam is where you clarify your doubts and you have a samvada with your teacher. And Nididhyasanam is when you remove the habitual errors of taking oneself to be a limited being, a limited individual. And so Pujya Swamiji defines Nididhyasanam as habitual error removal. But here when we talk about Shravanam, it is a stage where the Shishya studies under the Guru by listening to their talks, reading their books and so on. But it again has to do with words. And a Shrotriya is one who over the years has listened to and also retained the teachings of his or her Guru and gained a similar competency to teach others. So Guru should necessarily be a Brahma Shrotriya and preferably also be a Brahma Nishtha. And the teaching that is present from time immemorial is passed down through an oral tradition, which what is referred to as a Shrauta Parampara. So what is common to in all of these points is a singular theme, that it is through words alone that this knowledge can be communicated. And for a subject matter as subtle as those that we deal with in the Vedas, the importance of the accuracy of the words used for imparting this knowledge cannot be highlighted enough. And so the clarity and the precision that goes into this teaching is very important. Any thoughts so far? Okay, we'll just move on to the next slide. So this is basically just making a strong suggestion that yes, it's very important to use words correctly because that's what the teaching constitutes of, these words. And the teaching is not only unfolding the meaning of the Shastras, but also includes all the different prakriyas that go into it. And so the prakriyas also have to be handled with great care. So let's understand the concept of untranslatables. So language in every culture evolves to incorporate the nuances, ideals, and symbolisms of that particular culture. And this is greatly discussed in Rajiv Malhotraji's book, Being Different, as well. So if you haven't glimpsed it or seen YouTube videos of that, I highly recommend doing so. The book is a great purchase to make as well. So this is the book. And with regards to what we'll be covering today, the majority of the insights are presented based on my studies under Pujya Swamiji and other teachers from Arsha Vidya Gurukulam. And they've always taken great care in using the words correctly. So that is something that is very unique to our tradition, very unique to our parampara, I would say. And we are highly blessed to find such teachers who unfold the teaching using the correct methodologies. It's a very rare thing to come across, honestly. Now, while some words are common to all traditions, there are always a few words which are entirely unique to people. So, if somebody would like to participate and tell me what are some words that are common to all cultures, we can maybe start with that. Anyone?
Moksha.
Not really. So, can you tell me which culture is moksha common to besides our, Indian cultures?
Maybe they use different words, maybe solace or something, but it means the same when we.
So let me ask this question. Is solace the same as the meaning of moksha? So solace means peace. So does
No,
moksha mean peace?
no,
Okay, so then you have
no.
to give me another word, right? Because clearly solace and moksha are not the same. So what are
Yoga.
some words? Yoga. Okay, so yoga is an Indian word. It is Indian and it has been accepted by the other
And
cultures.
one more, Prashantji, guru.
Guru has been used and abused also in
That's
many
why
ways.
I'm saying, that's why
So,
I'm referring it. I
so,
want
so
you
what
to cover that.
I'm
Thank you so much.
Wonderful, wonderful. So what I'm really asking is there are some words that are unambiguously common to all traditions, which are clearly indicating the same meaning across all traditions. So for example, water, right? Every tradition has a word for water. In Hindi, you call it jal. In Sanskrit, you call it apaha. In English, you call it water. In French, you'll call it eau. So all of these languages have a common word, or sorry, a word that is uh, talking about the same substance, so the same object or the same concept. Similarly, you have a word for food. Every culture will have a word for food. Every culture will have a word for ocean, for land, for mountains, because these things are common to all cultures, to all regions in the world. But now, when we talk about words such as moksha, as Nivedita ji said, I would argue and say that it is only common to the Indic traditions. In fact, it is not found anywhere else in the world. So when we talk about words such as, we'll see today that when we talk about words such as salvation, when you talk about solace, when you talk about peace, all of these things are not indicative of moksha at all. So that is one point I want to convey. So let us take a look at some words from around the world which are only unique to their particular culture. For instance, this is a German word. I can't pronounce it, so I'm not going to try to. But it depicts a feeling of solitude, being alone in the woods, and a connectedness to nature. So there is no word in any other culture that conveys the same meaning that this single word in German does. You may have to use a couple of sentences, you may have to use a couple of expressions, phrases, lines of words in order to convey the meaning of this word. But there's no single word that can be directly mapped and translated which conveys this meaning. So that is what is meant by an untranslatable. An untranslatable is that which has no translation using a single word in any other language. So this is the first German word that we see. Here's an Italian word. Uh, Culastrino, the mark left on a table by a cold glass. Here's a third word. The Inuits are Eskimos who live in the Arctic region. And you can see that some of these words have also evolved to incorporate the cultural symbolisms of that region. So, if we go back and we look at the Italians, they are very fond of fine wine. Especially white wine is considered to be one of the great products of Italy. And so clearly they will have a word that refers to this concept as well. If you think about Eskimos, they live in very sparsely populated areas. There are very few people living in that region, and therefore it is likely that the feeling of anticipation when you go outside to check if someone's coming may also be there. And so this is very unique to their culture, that they are always kind of desperate to see if there's somebody outside, or maybe somebody has come to visit me, because it's a very rare thing to happen. So it's again something that's unique to their tradition, this particular word. Here's a Japanese word, and we're all aware of the fine, bamboo trees that are found in Japan, and not just bamboo, but even different varieties which are extremely long or extremely tall and they have a very thin stem. And so the sunlight is beautifully filtered through the leaves, and it kind of, seems like it's sparkling, almost like you're walking through nightscape with these leaves forming the canvas of the sky and the sun kind of like twinkling like stars through these different leaves. So this has again evolved specifically to Japan, this word. Here's a Russian word for a person who asks too many questions, and we all know a few of these people. Here's a Spanish word, and Spaniards are supposed to be very sociable, and they have a lot of highlighted conversations after meals. So this is a word that implies the time spent after lunch or dinner talking to people you share the meal with. And there's another word in Spanish that you call siesta. So siesta is when you take a nap, an afternoon nap after a meal after your lunch. And this is also very common in Ahmedabad, actually, or not Ahmedabad, but in Gujarat in general. And because it's so hot in the daytime, especially in the afternoons, that people usually take a couple of hours break after lunch, and they go home to sleep, and then they come back for work. So this is an Indonesian word. A joke told so poorly and so unfunny that one cannot help but laugh. Here's a Hawaiian word. The act of scratching your head in order to help you remember something you have forgotten. Here's a French word. Dépassement. The feeling that comes from one not being in one's own home country. Here's an Urdu word. The transporting suspension of disbelief that can occur in good storytelling. Swedish word. The word for glimmering road-like reflection of the moon in the water. And here's a bonus word that is very unique only to us in India. The word indicating unfathomable incompetence on part of individuals who, despite finding themselves in favorable situations, still manage to bungle things up in myriad ways. And this is what the word indicates. So, and it's very versatile, and I'm actually being half serious here, because if you use this word pappu, though we use it as a joke for Rahul Gandhi, if you actually use it in any other culture, there's no way to translate it. It's very unique to people who have shared a common culture in India. So this word can be used in different forms. Proper noun, this is pappu. Common noun, don't behave like a pappu. Abstract noun, stop this pappugiri. So this word is very versatile, and honestly, like, I'm not even joking here, it is very unique to India, and it's very unique to our common culture, especially people who have followed the last election. So it's a non-translatable, as Shyam Krishna Bhai said, that pappu is a non-translatable, to be honest. Now, coming back to more seriousness, the Inuits, these group of Eskimos.
Sorry,
yeah.
Prashant, you forgot one popular language, Punjabi, that has got a lot of typical words which are not common.
I see. Yeah, and they've got a lot of slangs also, which I may not dare to use here.
I know.
Punjabis have that, definitely.
From the pappu, all the thoughts comes. The one common word in Punjabi they use is jugaad.
Jugaad.
Make it jugaad.
Yeah.
Okay. Jugaad. So like that. Anyway, siapa, all that stuff.
Yeah.
Anyway, go ahead.
No, I'm glad you brought that up. And every word will have some of these. In Gujarati, there's a word we have, and I for the life of me, I cannot even explain it. Forget translate. I can't even explain it in a different language. It's called chapli or chapla. Right? And it's only if you're a Gujarati you'll understand what I mean. Nobody else will understand it, and I swear I cannot explain it also. So if you have a Gujarati friend, maybe you can ask them, what does chapla mean? Chapla or chapli? Chapli is for females, chapla is for males. So that's an exercise for all of you. Now, here's a group of Eskimos, Inuit, and they have 93 different words that describe snow. And this list is not meant to be readable. It's just to convey that there's an enormous list. And the reason is because they are so familiar with this idea of snow, with the concept of snow, because there's snow all around. And therefore, they have different words that convey the different types of snow. You'll have like powdery snow, you'll have dry snow, you'll have wet snow, you'll have closely packed snow. And there's one word which I found was very unique, a little funny, but unique nonetheless. The one which I highlighted over here. And they have a word for a snowball that was handled by a Hollywood actor called Johnny Depp. So it's called Deptla, a small snowball preserved in lucite that had been handled by Johnny Depp. I find this hilarious, but at the same time, it's part of their culture, and it's in a way it's awesome. So now let's look more further into how it applies to our traditions. Sanskrit too is a beautiful language, and it has evolved to incorporate the sentiments, expressions, idioms, and wisdom of our Vaidika culture, and thus it has terminology which cannot be found in any other language. Because of the widespread usage of English, unfortunately, we have gotten into the habit of translating words and indiscriminately finding an English counterpart for them even in situations when they don't apply. This has consequently led to the Vaidika narrative being digested by being mapped onto a predominantly Abrahamic one due to the English language evolving in that particular region. We need to place effort to de-link ourselves from mapping the Vedika categories. This should not be from, but it should be onto the Abrahamic categories. So I'll just make that quick correction right now before I forget. Okay. So any questions here? Because now we are going to slowly get into the words. This is a very important concept of untranslatables, and even touching upon what Nivedita ji said. So we were very quick to map moksha onto a Western word like solace or peace or whatever, and it does not really work there, because anytime you talk about mapping is when you do a 1:1 mapping, or you could do a 1:many mapping. So this is a mathematical language or mathematical concept where you can map one object onto one or more objects. And so when we talk about untranslatables, it is something that cannot be mapped to any, because it loses its granularity and meaning. Is this kind of clear? And also why English as a language has evolved in the region that is catering to the Abrahamic faiths. So when you talk about English, when you talk about Europe, when you talk about America, these are predominantly Abrahamic, right? As far as the religion goes. And so whatever evolution of words and have taken place have been to cater to the Abrahamic concepts. So when you use words such as God, you use words such as salvation, all of these cater directly to an Abrahamic concept. And therefore it cannot be mapped onto a Vedic concept, because the language Sanskrit has evolved to carry the expressions of the Vedic culture. And so we need to de-link ourselves from this unfortunate mapping. Okay, so I'll just move on to the next slide. So here's the first word, Brahman. And the incorrect translation of this, of course, is God. So Brahman is defined in the Taittiriya Upanishad as Satyam Jnanam Anantam. And God, if you just Google dictionary, it's defined as the creator and ruler of the universe and source of all moral authority, the supreme. Clearly, this is not Brahman. I mean, I don't even need to get into an explanation of that. But anyway, any thoughts before I might proceed too fast? All clear, right? Okay. Just stop me in case I'm rushing this. The second word is Ishvara Bhagwan. And again, one may assume that can you use God to refer to Ishvara and Bhagwan? And the answer is no. So Ishvara, and I'm referring to the Tattva Bodha here, is defined as Maya Upadhihi San Atma Ishvaraha iti Uchyate. Atma, being the one endowed with the limiting adjunct of Maya, is called Ishvaraha. And clearly, if we go back to the definition of God again, it's not the same. The creator, ruler of the universe, and source of all moral authority. This moral authority business doesn't work for us, because Dharma is not the same as moral authority. There's no mandate of a guy sitting somewhere up in heaven who's creating this book of laws, and that is Dharma. That is not Dharma. So there are a lot of problems with this kind of translation as well. Now, Ishvara and Bhagwan, we can talk about Bhagwan, the second word. Bhagwan is one endowed with the sixfold Bhagas. Ananta Ishwarya, not the actress, Yashasam, Shriyam, Jnanam, Vairagyam, and Viryam. So this is the definition of Bhagwan, and I believe I could be wrong, and I'll check my sources again, but this could be from the Vishnu Puran as well. So Ishvara and Bhagwan are synonymous, and they point towards the same entity, which is what you call Shaguna Brahma. So any thoughts here? Questions, comments? Okay, we'll see the next word.
Prashant bhai,
Yeah.
sometimes Bhagwan is translated as Lord also. Yeah, usually.
Yes.
Some people do.
Yes. And so No, that's a good point you make. And many times we may even see, our own teachers doing that, and which is fine to an
Yeah,
extent because they've already deconditioned the student to understand what Ishvara is. So once you do that, then it is very easy for us to jump back and forth between these translations. But if the person is not exposed to the correct understanding of Ishvara, correct understanding of Bhagavan, correct understanding of Brahman in the first place, then it could lead to an extreme amount of confusion. So Pujya Swamiji has always been very kind to all audiences. He's always accommodated everybody. And so sometimes if you even see him use words such as Lord or God, it is only after he has correctly explained the meaning of Ishvara, explained the meaning of Bhagwan, and then it is almost like reverse digestion. Because the word God has now become mapped onto our traditional context as opposed to the other way around. And so that is what I really like in our Ashavidya teachers, that they always explain the Vedic meaning correctly, the Sanskrit word correctly, and then they use the word interchangeably, if at all, but then it is always mapped onto our categories. And so we start looking at God from the standpoint of Ishvara as opposed to the other way around. So to a certain extent, even Lord is used in that context, because if you look at the word Aishwaryam, it is overlordship. So one aspect of Ishvara can also be Lord in that respect. But now, if you use Lord as a title for human beings, like Lord Macaulay, and this that's a little absurd. But yeah. So, but over here, Ishvara and Bhagavan are the same. So one can use this interchangeably, but one should avoid using the word God, especially when you're exposing an outside audience to our teachings, because immediately they will think about the God that is defined in the Abrahamic theologies, the God sitting up
yeah,
there.
yeah. I usually avoid if somebody asks me if I believe in God, I say no, because uh, most people imply that by God they imply monotheist deity. I think
Exactly.
a personal God. So I usually say if somebody asks me if I believe in God, I say no.
No, I do something very similar. So many times, in India, the so-called rationalists, who are really pseudo-rationalists, to be honest, they will say, you know what, you Hindus, you believe in God, and that's absurd, and we don't believe in it. So somebody once asked me that, do you believe in God? And I said, no, I don't. So he's like, how can that be? You're a Hindu, you study the Vedas. Don't you guys talk about God? I said, define God for me. And so he said, God is this guy who created the world, and he's sitting in heaven, he's doing things. I said, I don't believe in this guy. I don't even, I would find it absurd if somebody did. And so then he asked me what I believe in, and I said, do you accept that the world exists? And then he said, yeah. And do you accept that there is consciousness? Yeah. Do you accept that there are certain laws? There's a certain order to nature. You have the law of gravity, you have the biological order, the physical order, the chemical order, the psychological order. All of these orders are there. Do you accept this order? And he's like, of course. It's common. So I said that is what we refer to as Ishvara, the order, that which sustains this entire jagat, that which who is the laws, who is the very substantive, who is the very consciousness, who is the very the cause and the effect. And so there is no personal God that we believe in, and that is something that Hindus need to get out of their minds, that there is a personal savior, creator, kind of God sitting somewhere up in heaven, because that is absurd. And there are so many logical fallacies involved in that we'll explore it further as we go ahead today. So today's session is really debunking most of our misconceptions related to words. As we go in future modules, there will also be a session where we'll be debunking common misconceptions, but that will be more related to concepts. And today we are debunking misconceptions related to words and translations. So, I'm glad you pointed that out, Shamubai. So here's the problem when we use the term God. The term God does not have a clear meaning in any culture outside of the Abrahamic paradigm wherein it originated, which unsurprisingly makes it untranslatable in an external context. If one is to translate God to mean Ishvaraha, then there is no word left for Brahman. If God is translated as Brahman, then we are left with no word for Ishvara. So let's take a look at that. So here we have God. I map it onto Ishvara, and poor Brahman, you know. Brahman is like, Mera kya hoga? Now if you map God onto Brahman, then Ishvara says, Mera kya hoga? So either way, you have to make a compromise, and therefore it doesn't make sense. So this informs us that the expression God is unable to correctly represent either of the two Vedika concepts correctly. The third word, Atma, and the incorrect word for that is soul. The incorrect translation is soul. So Atma, if you recall Tattvabodha, is defined as Sthula Sukshma Karana Sharira Vyatiriktaha Pancha Koshatitha San Avastha Traya Sakshi Sachidananda Swarupaha San Yastisthati Sa Atma. And soul is described in Google Dictionary as the spiritual or immaterial part of a human being or animal regarded as mortal. This is not Atma, clearly. So, I'm not going to like define each and every single one of these words because our teachers have already taught us very well in Tattvabodha, and I assume that there is already a basic background of Tattvabodha over here. So, now the other word, Jiva. The incorrect translation is soul. The Jiva is the individual, the one that identifies with the Sthula, Sukshma, and Karana Shariras as enlivened in the presence of Atma. And the reason I put this enlivened in the presence in quotes is because this is one of the models that you call Pratibimbavada Chaitanya. So, sorry, Pratibimbavada model, Prakriya. And in reality, it is not that the Jiva is enlivened by the Atma, but the very content also is the Atma. The content of the Jiva, the content of the Jagat, the content of Ishvara, all that there is only Atma. But over here, in order to explain how things become sentient, we are using the Pratibimbavada model. And so, just a quick recap for those who want to revisit the Tattvabodha concepts. Sthula Sharira is physical body, Sukshma Sharira is the subtle body, Karana Sharira is the causal body. And here's a chart that we had covered. So I'll just give you like a few seconds to look at it and we'll move on. This is there in our Tattvabodha presentation. So the problem, once again, just as with the term God, soul too is used with no apparent meaning outside of the Abrahamic context, which is the only honest standard one should use to define it. So this term has been so heavily digested by everybody that there's no meaning left. Hindu will use soul, Christian will use soul, Muslim will use soul, the Jewish people will use soul, everybody will use soul. And therefore, whose definition are we really going by? If we have to be truly honest and we have to give even respect to other outside cultures, then the only definition that you can go by is the Abrahamic definition of soul. Because the soul word does not belong to us. And same as before, if we translate soul as Jiva, we have no word left for Atma. If we translate it to Atman, then Jiva remains unmapped. Same issue, same as God, Jiva, God, Ishwara and Brahman. There's nothing for Atma if you call it Jiva. And if you call it Atma, then there's nothing for Jiva. But that's an excellent way to avoid this whole mess. Any thoughts? This is open participation.
Use the words as it is.
Exactly. Just don't use the word soul. Simple. So exactly. Good point. So Pujya Sabji once joked, playing upon the phonetics of the word soul. We don't have one soul. We have two souls. Like this. There's no such word like soul that applies to us. I just wanted to make that abundantly clear. And also, the only spirit is in the bloodstream of a person who has had a few or more of these. That's what you call spirit, right? Seriously, spirit is another word we want to religiously avoid, which takes us to the next word, religion. But before that, let's take a quick note of what Shastra says. Surana Pibet. One should avoid the consumption of alcohol. So keep away from spirits, the word and the drinks. And here's just a little joke for you. So there's this guy, probably Mexican, and in the Spanish language, J is pronounced as H. So Jesus becomes Jesus, and so here he says, "I will heal you, I will save your soul, I will even die for you." Shoe repair shop. So all of these words are referring to the shoes, by the way. Heel as in like the shoe heel. Anyway. That's good, Nirmala ji, I'm very glad that you don't use the word. So now we look at the word group 5, Dharma. Incorrect translations, religion. Explanation. Dharma comes from the Sanskrit dhatu root dhr, which means to hold, sustain or keep in place. Dharma is not confined to any one aspect of an individual's life, but pervades them all. Culture, politics, philosophy, religion, duty, order are all subsumed by the word dharma and come under its purview. Therefore, dharma cannot be reduced to any single one of these terms. This is also why I have serious issues with the idea of secularism in India, by the way. But I don't want to get into that. We'll have a separate module just for that. But the point is that dharma cannot be reduced to religion, because religion is something that has evolved as a separate word in the Abrahamic context. Religion refers primarily to the Abrahamic faith, and then it is separate from things such as science. It is separate from government. It is separate from social life. It is separate from a lot of things, and that allows for the concept of secularism to thrive, where secularism is classically defined as a separation of church and state. Now, when you talk about dharma, there are so many things that come under its purview. In fact, I would go so far as saying there is nothing that does not come under the purview of dharma. Because when you talk about culture, there's dharma involved. When you talk about politics, when you talk about the right leader, choosing, voting for the right party, when you talk about looking after the welfare of your people, all of this is dharma, politics. When you talk about philosophy, of course there is dharma. When you talk about the idea of religion, when you talk about worship, when you talk about pujas, when you talk about rituals, there is dharma involved. When you talk about your duty towards your family, towards your friends, towards your employer, there is a dharma involved, there's a duty involved, and that's dharma. There's swadharma, towards yourself. So, and there's order, of course, the universal order that holds everything in place. That is also dharma. So there is nothing that is not dharma. Therefore, if we translate dharma to religion, we are taking away the granularity of and the what do you call it, the far-reaching consequences of the word, and stripping it away from all of these other concepts. And so dharma is not equal to religion. Unfortunately, a lot of people use it as such, and this is something that we need to address. Any thoughts here? Okay, it's pretty straightforward.
Maybe Prashantji, you can talk about Sanatan Dharma here, or not? It's the right place to do.
It's a great place to do it, actually. So thank you for bringing that up. When we talk about Sanatana Dharma, a lot of people make this mistake. They say there is a Muslim Dharma, there's a Christian Dharma, there's a Sanatana Dharma, there's a Buddhist Dharma, there's a this Dharma, that Dharma. It's all complete nonsense. In fact, Sanatana Dharma is not an adjective to Dharma. Rather, it takes away the limitations that one might associate and project upon the word Dharma. Dharma is something that is beginningless, right? Dharma has no beginning. Therefore, Dharma by essence is Sanatana. And so Sanatana Dharma is the same as Dharma. So when one talks about something such as, so everybody knows what Sanatana means, right? Sanatana is that which is unborn. So Dharma is always Sanatana, as Shyamubai points out. So just as when we talk about Satchit Ananda or Satyam Jnanam Anantam, the word Anantam takes away the perceived limitations that may be projected upon the words Sat and Chit. So existence, Sat can be seen as something that exists. Chit can be seen as something that is conscious. But but the word Anantam takes away the limitations and says that Sat is not only what exists, but Sat is existence. And existence has no limitations. Consciousness has no limitations. Limitlessness, of course, has no limitations. So that is why we translate Anantam as limitlessness, because it also takes away the attributed limitations that one may project upon these words. Similarly, the word Sanatana takes away the attributed and projected limitations upon the word Dharma. And so Sanatana Dharma is for all purposes congruous to Dharma. So there is only Sanatana Dharma, that is Dharma. So we look at the sixth grouping, Atmajnanam, self-knowledge. What are some of the incorrect translations that you all can think of? Okay, self-realization, for instance, self-experience, enlightenment. Any thoughts on why these are wrong?
Self-realization might be something like problem specific, or something like realizing that after the analyzation of a problem, so we can tell that when we realize it by ourselves, that is more apt for a situation, not as a.
I think we have all have realized this, our Atma, I think, because there is no question about whether we exist or not. We are sure that we exist. So
Right.
we all.
That's correct. So we are, as our teachers say, we are ever realized. There's nothing to realize. I'm always there. I'm never distant from myself. So wherever I go, I go. and myself is always there, right? So there's nothing to realize the self. Also, the word realization kind of gives the sentiment, and this may not be the actual epistemological definition of it, but it gives a sentiment that something is realized because it was forgotten and it's realized again. Oh, I realized I just left my keys home, that kind of thing. And so the self is not something that just becomes a realization as such. We have to get more nuanced about it. So,
And
and these terms are used in all these neo-spiritual circles, especially I'm averse to the idea of spiritual, but a lot of people will use this. We'll see this ahead. The Atma, the self, being now we talk about experience. The Atma, being the very subject, cannot be an object of one's experience. If the self were to be experienced, it would become an object, which in turn would require another subject to objectify it. And this continues ad infinitum. So if the self were to be experienced, then you have to be other than the self to experience it, right? If you were the self that is experienced, how can you experience yourself? It's like fire cannot burn itself, water cannot wet itself, it can wet other things. Fire can burn other things, it cannot burn itself. So the Atma is that in the presence of which all experiences take place. And the Atma is also the content, the very basis of all experiences. But it itself cannot be experienced as an object. The other point I wanted to make, which I have not stated in the PowerPoint, but it is anytime you experience something, you're experiencing an attribute. You're never experiencing the substantive. So when you experience, when you touch something that's hard, the hardness is an attribute, but it is not really the substance. When you experience something that's hot, when you experience heat, it is not really intrinsic to the object. Heat is not intrinsic to the object. Heat is something that's an attribute of it. So if the Atma were to be experienced, then the Atma would necessarily have attributes, because only an attribute can be experienced. But we know that Vedanta teaches us the Atma's nirguna. It is beyond attributes, it's beyond the gunas. And therefore clearly it cannot be experienced. It's just very simple logic. So, uh, yeah, exactly. So self-knowledge is not incorrect. Self-knowledge here, when we talk about self-knowledge, think about it as knowledge of the self that is not known to you as an object. And so the Kenopanishad says the self is known as well as not known. Remember, if you studied Kenopanishad. So the student, says, I know the self and I also don't know it. And the one who knows it and also does not know it is the one who actually knows it. So this is what it means is you know the self, you know the Atma as my very self. You know it as your very self. You know it as that which is free from limitations. You know it as that which is the basis of existence. In fact, which is existence. You know it as that which is consciousness. You know it as that which is your very self, your very Swarupa. And if you know the self as that, then you know the self. But as Shambhubai points out, if you know the self as an object, then you don't know the self. Because if you know it as an object, means you've objectified it, and therefore it is not the self, but it is something else, and therefore you cannot know it. So that is, yeah, good point, good point. So here is more, some funny spiritual blurb I just posted here. Oh, master, is it proper for a monk to use email? Sure, as long as there are no attachments. So let's look at the sixth group of words. Let's continue on with the enlightenment word. Enlightenment, as with most spiritually inspired words, does not have a well-rooted meaning and continues changing with the context. Its definition differs, ranging from being used during the European intellectual movement that caught on in the 17th century to refer to thinkers, philosophers, scientists, etc., to the state of Buddhahood of Gautama Siddhartha, to the description of Hindu acharyas and such, and frighteningly even Jesus. So a lot of people use the word enlightenment, they throw it around like it's something that you have to use if you're spiritual, and they use it for everybody. Oh, you're an enlightened person, you speak like an enlightened person. Oh, Jesus was enlightened. Oh, this guy was enlightened. Buddha was enlightened. Mahavir was enlightened. Everybody is enlightened. Enlightened is such a thrown about word that it has no meaning left anymore. And at this point, there's no clear definition of it, because when you overuse a word out of context, it loses definition. And so there is no applicable definition for enlightenment in our tradition. Now let's look at some Deepak Chopraism. So he's one of my favorite people to pick on when you talk about spiritual people, when you talk about this neo Vedanta kind of pseudo spiritualists. And on the topic of neo spiritualism, here's an intermission, and we bring you some real quotes by Deepak Chopra. These are actual things he said. It's not something I made up. He says these things. Imagination undertakes the mechanics of love. Can you figure that out? I have no idea what he means by that, but This is what people buy, they buy their books, his books. You have to think of your brand as a kind of myth. A myth is a compelling story that is archetypal. I have no idea what he means by that. But the real secret to lifelong good health is actually the opposite. Let your body take care of you. That means don't go to the gym, don't take a walk, don't do Surya Namaskars, let your body take care of itself. I don't know what he means by that. Traditional Islam is a mixture of all obedience to Allah, and if that requires militancy, so be it. That's dangerous. Always go with your passions. Never ask yourself if it is realistic or not. So these are things that Deepak Chopra has said in his books, in his speeches, in his tweets, whatever, and people buy it. They buy it hook, line, and sinker. So yeah, if anybody understands what Deepak Chopra says, I don't trust that person. That's all I can say. And here's my favorite. Consciousness is the driver of evolution. Every time you eat a chicken or a banana, it transforms into a human. I don't know what. I'll not say anything further. So here are some more Deepak Chopraisms, by the way. It has been said by some that the thoughts and tweets of Deepak Chopra are indistinguishable from a set of profound sounding words put together in random order. This site aims to test that claim. Each quote is generated from a list of words that can be found in Deepak Chopra's Twitter stream, randomly stuck together in a sentence. So this site, there was one very cool website where they put 10 words. Some are real quotes by Deepak Chopra and some are randomly stringed together words. And you have to try to separate which one is real and which one are randomly put together. And honestly, it's a hard thing to do because people like Deepak Chopra, and I'm just picking on him over here, but the examples abound. Deepak Chopra, Devdutt Patnaik, Osho. Sorry if anybody is a follower, but all of these people, they said a lot of random, flashy sounding neo-spiritual speak. And it was very impressive, it was very elusive, it was very mysterious. And they had this sense of mysticism around them, that whatever they say is very profound. But the point is that our teachers have stressed on one thing and one thing alone, which is clarity. The words have to be clear, the words have to convey the meaning unambiguously. You cannot derive one or two or more multiple meanings from the same thing that is said. So, this is where Sampradaya comes into the picture. I will not really get into it more, but if you want to have some fun, go to this website. So, let's go back to the words. Group 7, Moksha. Nivedita ji, I'll let you do the honors here. What are the incorrect translations?
Solitude, solace.
Let's go with salvation for now, but we can add solitude and solace as well, just because you say it.
Many such.
Okay, so these are all incorrect words. Let's never use them. Explanation. Moksha is a freedom from a sense of limitations that follows jnana nishtha. Jnana nishtha is firm abidance in the self, in the knowledge of the self, that I am, Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma. I am not these limited objects of the world, including the shariras, including the manaha, and so on. Salvation. Deliverance from sin and its consequences, believed by Christians to be brought about by faith in Christ. The Christian doctrine believes that humans are original sinners, and Jesus, born of a virgin birth, alone is free from original sin, and that accepting Jesus as one savior is the path to salvation. Do I need to expand upon this? I don't think so, but let me just place a hint over here that you take away one crucial element and the entire doctrine of the Bible falls flat. The element of the virgin birth. You take that away and everything fails. So anyway. And in case you're not convinced, here's what a Google search of salvation pulls up. Please, it has a very specific context that is rooted in Christianity. Let's not use it for moksha ever. Here's word group 8. Yeah.
I'd like to add something.
Okay.
I want you to comment on this. Some new spiritual people, what they say is that sometimes samsara is represented as having a lot of dukkha and durita.
Sorry, could you repeat that?
Lots of dukkha means sadness, or I don't know what the translation would be. Dukkha and durita, lots of problems for people. So samsara usually samsara dukkha. These words are usually used together. That is, we face lots of problems in this universe. So, some neo spiritual people say that
Yeah,
salvation means saving oneself from all these dukkha, durita, and all that
yeah.
doshas. So, salvation can be used for moksha. They argue. I want your
Yeah, so their argument is of course false because whenever we look at the epistemology of a word, we have to go to its origin. And the origin of salvation is in the Christian doctrine, the Bible. So it's deliverance from sin and its consequences, right? And here when we talk about sin, you talk about original sin and all of these things come in. And so clearly salvation is so far removed from our context that it's not even worth kind of exploring into because it is so different from moksha. It is not even connected, in fact. So now what you refer to is very common in these neo-Buddhist circles. You know, especially they misquote Buddha by saying, or misquote, or perhaps correctly quote. I don't know the Buddhist teachings, but you know, they samsara is dukkha, right? So life is suffering. That's one of the tenets of Buddhism. And so samsara, as defined in our teachings, is a life of becoming. Samsara is not dukkha. A samsari is one who is given to a life of becoming. You want to become you think that you are unsuccessful and you want to become successful. That life of becoming, and until you are dissatisfied with that outcome, that is samsara. You feel that okay, you know, I'm unhappy and I want to become happy. That life of becoming is again samsara. So you are a samsari as long as you want to become other than what you are. But for a Jivan Mukta, there is no samsara. Though he exists, though he interacts, though he transacts, though he deals with everyone. Look, you know, I always take the example of Pujya Swamiji as a Mahatma and a Mahagnani. That for a person like him, there was no samsara. And yet he existed in this world and he dealt with people, he helped them in their times of sorrow. He was there to guide them towards jnanam. You know, he put together so many projects for rural empowerment and so on. And so, samsari is not this, you know, samsara is not this world. Or a lot of people say, oh, tumhara samsara chalu ho gaya, right? When you get married or when you have children. So, samsara is not correct to translate as a world, but samsara is a life of becoming. The samsari is one who is given to that life. So again, you know, salvation does not apply even in that context. In fact, the Buddhists, the neo-Buddhists that you also refer to, who talk about life is dukkha and samsara is dukkha and all, they should not be referring to salvation because the Buddhist teachings are far superior. There's a lot that is there in Buddhism itself, which has solutions to their problems. So they should not be taking a Christian term and applying it to themselves. It's just a bad idea. So let's look at group 8. Yeah, neo-spiritual Hindu circles also use it, and we have to discourage it. And at the end of this session, I'm going to give an exercise to all of us, so it'll be a good thing to do. The correct word is mithya, incorrect is false. Or sorry, that sounds wrong. Incorrect is false. Incorrect word is false. Explanation: mithya, the relative transactional changing order of reality, divided further into vyavaharikam, which is objective order, and pratibhashikam, which is a subjective reality. Those who don't understand Advaita well are quick to dismiss the world as false and create a negative, almost comical view of it. The Jagat is neither absolutely real, Satyam, nor completely false, Tucham. It is Mithya, that which constantly changes in time and depends upon Satyam for its existence. So you cannot dismiss the Jagat as false because the Jagat clearly exists. From one order of reality, it is real. It has to be dealt with accordingly. Which takes us to the next word, Shrishti. The correct word is Shrishti. The incorrect word is creation. The Jagat is a manifestation of Ishvara. And in fact, when we talk about Ishvara, we are also talking about the Upadana Karana, the very material content, the very material of this Jagat is Ishvara. The substance of the Jagat is Ishvara. So there's no creation. We do not accept the doctrine of creation or believe in a maker that is distinct from the world. From the world. In our teachings, Jeev, Jagat and Ishvara are not seen as mutually exclusive. Non-dual, right? Advaita. So here's the next word. And can anybody guess what this is indicating? Illusion. It's an optical illusion. So the correct word is Maya. Incorrect is illusion / magic. Maya is not illusion. Maya is the potential of Brahman to manifest as the Jagat. An illusion is something that appears to be there but isn't. Now, one may argue that from the standpoint of Satyam, there is no Jagat, and thereby it is an illusion, which is a good Purva Paksha to put forward. To be honest, it's a good Purva Paksha. Because one can say that, yeah, from the standpoint of Satyam, this Mithya is also an illusion. It's not really there. It's kind of like the rope snake, right? But we have to dive deeper into this area. The argument does not hold water since it neglects the orders of reality. For the Mithya individual making a Mithya observation, that observation is quite real since they share the same order of reality. Therefore, dismissing the Jagat as an illusion or unreal is incorrect, right? So, for instance, we all have studied, I won't say we know, because I certainly have a long way to go before I know, but we all have studied that the Jagat is only, all that there is only Brahman. That there is nothing other than Brahman from the standpoint of Satyam. But still, when we talk about Mithya and we are transacting, we are having this Google Hangouts, we are eating food, we are talking to our friends, all of these things have a certain status. And that status is not false. At the same time, it is also not absolutely real, right? Because it is constantly in fluctuation. So this constant flux, this changing reality is what you call Mithya. And the Mithya depends upon Satyam for its existence. But while you are existing over here as a Mithya entity, as a Mithya object, you cannot dismiss the world as real. You just have to shift your paradigm by knowing that the truth, the content of this Jagat is Satyam. The substantive is Satyam, and whatever changes is a projection upon it, which is Mithya. But you yourself, from the standpoint of a Jiva, are an individual who is as real or unreal as the world. And therefore, you cannot dismiss it from the standpoint of the Jiva. And here's an example I'd like to give, right? When you're playing a video game, clearly the game is unreal. Clearly, if Mario dies, you're not going to die. But for Mario, who's the character inside the game, if he touches the enemy, he's going to die. Because, both of them, the Mario character as well as the enemy, the Goombas, they share the same order of reality. And similarly, if Mario eats a mushroom, he's going to grow big. And he can shoot fireballs and he can take out Bowser. So, yeah, one has to understand the orders of reality. Well, this is only an example. It's not meant to be taken super seriously. Just want to state that. Group 11. This is going to be fun. Can anybody tell me what is the correct word for this? For this kind of these kinds of statements. May the person gain Shubhgati, Shubhgamanam, or may they gain Mukti, Mukti Praptam. Exactly. So RIP. The incorrect word is rest in peace. Rest in peace is incorrect. I cannot overstate that. I will state it 100 times and still people will not understand because I'm tired of seeing Hindus on Facebook especially use this word, expression. Explanation. In the Hindu traditions, the circle of life continues on through Punarapi Jananam, Punarapi Manaram. The Ajnani is reborn in another Sharira based on their Prarabdha Karma, and we wish them an auspicious journey in the afterlife. And therefore, if a person passes away, please don't use RIP. Say something like, may you gain Shubhagamanam. Or, may you have Shubhagamanam, may you have Shubhagati, may you have a better birth, may you have a better journey, may you gain Mukti. All of these are valid expressions that are rooted in our culture, and they are applicable to us. The Jnani is different for the case of a Jnani, right? The Jnani, having gained Mukti, is free from the cycle of life and death, and therefore we seek their blessings. And one thing that really bothered me was when, after Pujya Swamiji's Mahasamadhi, a lot of people use RIP for him. It's one thing to use it for an Ajnani, which is still incorrect, but to use it for a Jnani, it really bothered me. I wanted to correct it, but it wasn't the right occasion for it. So, when a Jnani leaves the Sharira, when the Jnani has gained Jivan Mukti, Videha Mukti, you pray to them because they are not separate from Ishvara. They are Ishvara. So I just want to stress that it's very incorrect. It's not just incorrect, it's very incorrect. Erase this word from your vocabulary. Seriously. Please. And now in the Abrahamic theology, there is no concept of karma or rebirth. And they believe that the dead lie in rest until judgment day. And in Islam, this is known as Qiyamah, when they will rise from their graves. Right? So this is what judgment day implies. And now we know where zombie movies get their inspiration from. So on a closing note on RIP, one thing is certain. The only thing that needs to rest in peace is the expression rest in peace. So let's retire it permanently. And sorry, go ahead. But let me just
Anji,
for that. Sorry. Yeah, so this was a photo I took. There's a place in Florida. It's called Key West, and they have a cemetery. And on the gravestone, this was a marker. So I thought I'll share this picture with you. And I told you I was sick. This is what this person put before. I mean, on the gravestone. There was
But
another one which was very funny. I didn't want to share it here, but over there, a person whose husband was deceased, the wife wrote, "At least now I know where he sleeps." So I thought that was hilarious as well, but I didn't want to share it here.
sorry. Prashantji, sorry, I just want to put my thought there. Like you said, take this word RIP out of the dictionary, but I thought we can still use it for our friends who are not in our faith, like we live in America and live in other countries abroad. So I think they will understand RIP more than.
I'll let somebody else challenge that view. So if somebody else wants to put it forward.
Okay.
Shamu bhai, how about you?
I think no, but a Westerner comes to India or an Indian or a Hindu dies, no Christian or Muslim will say, may he gain Shukbadi or may he gain a rebirth or reincarnation or whatever they say. No Christian or no Westerner will say that. They will only say RIP. Why should we change our terms for them?
Sure,
In
that's
that,
a good argument. Let me give one more. Shashiji, do you actually believe in the Abrahamic theology?
No, not at all.
So then my question would be, why are you giving weight to it as though it is real? See what I mean? If you
Yeah,
believe
I
that a
understand,
if you believe a jiva is actually going to just stay in that body or whatever, they are resting in peace. If we
but
believe it, then we use it. If we don't believe it, then why do we use it at all? We don't
yeah,
accept it as a conclusion, right?
Prashantji, I have a little bit different philosophy. I don't try to teach fools
But then
because
you are also encouraging fools. It's not just teaching, but you are actually
uh,
encouraging the usage amongst Hindus because a Hindu does not accept this as a conclusion. We don't accept
I
a judgment day. We don't accept judgment day. We don't accept Qayamat. We don't accept that there is no life after death. And
right.
therefore, if we give weight to that expression, then we are encouraging other Hindus to
Hmm.
continue using it. And we are exposing them to our using it. And they will use it for Hindus also, not just for
No, I
Christians.
will not use for any Hindu passing away. But I'm saying a Christian friend, a Australian or my New Zealander friend pass away. I mean, if I
So,
just
so instead
finish,
of saying rest in peace, you can just say something like, may the person be at peace, which is true because everybody needs to be at peace, whether they are resting or whether they are taking rebirth, right?
okay, got
So,
you.
but if we say rest in peace, we are actually giving substance to their theology and we are saying that, you know what, you are right. And
Okay,
not only
I
that,
understand where
but
you're
we are
going.
also
Okay,
saying
yeah, got
that if
it.
a Hindu observes us, then that Hindu will it'll become a habit for that person because the word RIP only has become popular because Hindus have used it. If
Yeah,
Hindus had never used the word in the first place, we would not have this problem today. So it's a definite issue.
okay. No, it's good. Good point. Yeah.
So let's look at group 12. Astika, Nastika, Saheshwara, Nireshwara. What are the incorrect words there? Anybody? Smitaji's left, it seems. Oh, Smitaji, are you there? Huh. Atheist and theist. Exactly. Good. So atheism and theism are wrong translations. Let's look why. Look at why. Astika accepts the Vedas as a pramana. Nastika rejects the Vedas as a pramana. Saishwara accepts the concept of Ishvaraha in their teachings. Nireshwara, where you reject the concept of Ishvaraha. And in Western concepts, you have only two expressions. You have atheism, which is disbelief in the existence of God or gods, and theism, where you have belief in the existence of God or gods, especially belief in one God as creator of the universe. Right? So clearly, as Hindus, Astika, Nastika do not, theism and atheism do not apply for us. Let's see why. The Abrahamic traditions demand unquestionable acceptance in their defined notion of God, which neither refers to Brahman nor Ishvara, as we saw earlier. Therefore, acceptance of the scriptures is tantamount to accepting God and vice versa. There is no option. However, in the Indic darshanas, one finds the following combinations. Astika plus Saishwara accepts Veda and Ishvara. Astika plus Nireshwara accepts Vedas but rejects Ishvara. Nastika plus Saishwara rejects the Vedas but accepts some notion, may not be the Vedic notion, but some notion of Ishvara, which may not even be correct. Nastika plus Nireshwara rejects both Ishvara and Vedas. Therefore, a binary division of theism and atheism fails in our context. And it's very simple, because let's say I'm a Sankhyavadi, or who does not accept, let's say I'm, what is a school of thought that, let's say I'm a Jaina, right? So I don't accept any concept of Ishvara. Now, is the Jaina a theist or an atheist? He's neither, because it doesn't work for him. He cannot be classified because clearly he accepts the Jaina darshanas, he accepts some scriptures, and therefore that makes him Nastika because he doesn't accept the Vedas, and it also makes him Nireshwara. But still, the Nastika and Nireshwara is also not an atheist. That is the beauty here. Or the Bauddha. The Bauddha does not accept the Vedas, nor does he accept Ishvara, and yet he is not not an atheist because he accepts some notion of Shastra, some Shastra. If it will not be Vedas. We reject, sorry, Shamu bhai, what do you say? We reject all theology, so aren't we all atheists? No, because then even the concept of theology or non-theology doesn't apply to us. So if it applies to us, then we can say that we are atheists or theists. But because we don't even give any credence, any substance to it in the first place, therefore the only correct answer for us is that we are neither atheists nor theists. Why? Because these classifications don't work for us. We are Hindus. And we don't fall under your classification. That is the answer to give.
Yeah, I meant from their point of view, we are equal to atheists, right?
We should not even give them the opportunity to define ourselves.
Okay.
If they say, you know what, if let's say a Westerner comes to you and says, you know what, I think you're an atheist, say that I don't know what these terms are because they don't apply to me. I know if you are telling me what I am based on Astika, Nastika, Seshwara, Nireshwara, this, that, then I can accept your conclusion. So you have to talk to me in my language. If you want to transact to me, you have to map yourself onto my categories, not the other way around. And this is the whole reversal of gaze that Rajiv Malhotra ji talks about, where we have to stop looking at ourselves, judging ourselves, defining ourselves, classifying ourselves from the Western standpoint. We have to do it the other way around, where we are looking at the Westerners from the dharmic standpoint. And this is the reversal of gaze. Beautiful concept. Let's look at group 13, Advaita, Dvaita, Visheshadvaita. So what do you think is incorrect translation of all of these concepts? And not just Visheshadvaita, but others also, like Shuddha Dvaita and Nimbarka and whatever.
Duality, non-duality.
Perfect. So, or monotheism, polytheism, all of these. Close. So when we talk about Hindus often state that we are monotheists or polytheists, either in ignorance or a false appeal to universalize our tradition. That is something we should never do. If one is ignorant, it is okay. But one should never try to universalize our tradition by saying, oh, sab kuch ek hai. You know, तुम भी monotheist हो, हम भी monotheist है. तुम अल्लाह को मानते हो, हम ईश्वर को मानते हैं. तुम God को मानते हो, हम भगवान को मानते हैं. All is the same. This kind of stuff is a big problem. It's a massive problem. Let us take Advaita as a sample, because I don't want to spend too much time discussing each Advaita, Visheshadvaita, but taking Advaita over here as a sample Indic system and use a process of elimination to see why we don't fit into X theism, where X stands for mono, poly, etc. There will be innumerable differences between our Indic and Western categories, which disallow a 1:1 mapping. But in the interest of brevity, we will only analyze a few points on each page, since disproving a single condition is enough to invalidate the entire case, right? This is a logical corollary, that if you disprove one thing, the whole thing is dismissed. And so just to keep things simple, let's only focus on a couple of points, not all of them. Are we monotheists? Monotheism is the belief that there is only one God. So any objections? Are we monotheists? Yes or no? And if no, why?
I think there is nothing like concept of God in our belief system. So
okay, so let us go with that conclusion, and I'll ask you a follow-up question. Suppose, only for argument's sake, we change the definition of monotheism to say there is belief in only one Ishvara. Now, does that make it correct?
No, I think Prashantji,
Ishvara is just a manifestation, so
Fair enough. So Advaita teaches us Ishavasyam idam sarvam. All that there is only Ishvara. So correct, it is a manifestation. All that there is Ishvara, manifestation of Ishvara.
so
Ishvara is both. Yeah, sorry, Shashiji, go ahead.
Prashantji, is it not like what Swamiji used to say? There is only Ishvara, that's all. It doesn't say there is one or two or three. There is only Ishvara.
Exactly. Correct. That is Ishavasyam idam sarvam. All that there is only Ishvara.
Yeah.
Correct. Ishvara is both the nimitta karanam and which is the efficient cause, and the upadana karanam, which is the material cause of this jagat, one without a second. So Advaita doesn't just mean non-dual, but it means one without a second, and we'll see why it's important. When you talk about one God, which is monotheism, it refers to a creator distinct from creation. Creator is one guy, creation is another entity. The term one can belong to a larger set with other distinct items. You can have one god plus one comb plus one bottle of ketchup and so on. So one doesn't really tell you a lot because one could be a set of many. One could be a part of a set of many. So here's our skeptic who has now been upgraded to a Purva Pakshi. So he says, happy to see this upgrade from skeptic to Purva Pakshi. You aren't a monotheist, but does worshipping multiple devas imply polytheism? So, any answer to that? Are we polytheists? Why? Why not, Shamu bhai?
Even if we take in example of Advaita, all that is there is Ishvara. There is no two Ishvaras.
So, what about
Even
devas?
yeah, devas are also manifestation of same Ishvara.
Very
We are
good.
worshipping different. I think each law of this nature universe is represented by a certain devata, and we are worshipping them through that law.
Very
But
good.
it's not
maybe
actually
we can just
different.
say that it is tattva. Devas are just tattva part.
Devas are pinda. They are a part of the whole.
Yeah.
Right? So they are like very good. So let's look at the answer. And very good. Both of your points are valid. So
And
Uttara Pakshi says, welcome back. Glad you've come out of retirement and we are enjoying a new title. So previously it was skeptic and response. But now I thought let's make our categories more Indian. So let's have Purva Paksha and Uttara Paksha. And
Sorry, Prashantji, I also want to add, I think about the definition, the way you put the question, believe that there is only one God. First of all, we do not recognize the word God.
yes,
We don't understand what is word God. So how can we say, talk about it whether there is one or two or 10 or multiple?
exactly.
For us, the God has got no meaning. For us, the word God itself does not exist actually. We don't understand it, the definition of this.
Absolutely. It does not apply to us at all. And that's why the confusion follows.
Yeah. I think we understand Ishvara and Bhagwan and Brahman, that words better than this word maybe.
Very true. And that's why, like earlier, I inquired that suppose, just for argument's sake, I were to replace God with Ishvara, believe that there is only one Ishvara, that would also be incorrect because, as you rightly pointed out, that as the Upanishads teach us, Ishavasyam idam sarvam, there is only Ishvara. So the question of one does not arise because when you say there's one Ishvara, then there could be one something else also. So
Yeah.
these are all like very specificities that deep specifics we have to go into because it's all part of unfolding the teaching, and that's where we learn from our teachers that the usage of the correct words is so necessary because if
Yeah.
a lot of Hindu teachers, not our tradition thankfully, but outside of Arsha Vidya and other places, they say there is there's only one God and all that. It doesn't work for us. So anyway, very good points. So are we polytheists? Belief that there are multiple gods. The concept of devas is entirely unique to Vedikas, which is correct. The devas, as everything else, have their basis in Ishvara alone, which is what Nivedita ji also pointed out and Shamubai pointed out, that the basis for the devas are also Ishvara. Much like us, the devas too are jivas endowed with superior upadhis, but still having their own relative limitations. unlike Ishvara, who, as we have seen, is endowed with all glories in limitless measure. So we saw Ananta Ishwaryam, Ananta Shriyam, Ananta Viryam, Ananta Yashasam, all of this we saw. So the Devas are also like Jivas, but they are superior to Jivas in terms of upadhis. They can do fancy things that we cannot do. They may have longer lifespan, they may have more resilient bodies, they may be able to fly around, they may be able to exert some power over the elements of nature, like Agni, Vayuhu, all of these Devtas. But we are limited, but then even relative to other creatures we are more superior, having superior upadhis, right? For instance, if you look at an ant, clearly we can do a lot more than ants can, or a bacteria or a virus or whatever. So the devas are also for superior gradation compared to humans, but still they are jivas with their own upadhis, as Shamubai pointed out, living in higher lokas. So you have suvaha, tapa, manaha, no sorry, maha, tapaha, janaha, satyam loka, all of these lokas are there. So, correct. These complex interplays within our metaphysical constructs are completely outside the scope of classical polytheism, though it holds more relevance when discussing Greek, Roman, and other traditions. So, polytheism applies in the culture where the words have originated. It applies for the Romans, it applies for the Greeks, right? You have Zeus, and then you have uh, the different gods over there, Atlas, Mars, in Roman. So the Roman tradition is kind of a derivative of the Greek tradition. So Zeus becomes Jupiter, and there are also some theories where they mention that the Greeks have borrowed from our system. So our devas can be roughly mapped onto the Greek deities, but they've borrowed it and they've kind of like turned it into a polytheistic construct. So it does not really apply for us. So the Purvapakshi comes. So okay, do you follow monism or pantheism then? Any thoughts on that? Are we monists or pantheists? This is actually a better question. So we are slowly getting more refined in our questions. Okay, so we'll see it on the next page then. So the Uttara Pakshi says, monism and pantheism come the closest. In fact, a lot of people can mistake it for Advaita, really. But unfortunately, they too have some missing elements which are crucial parts of our tradition. Pantheism, the belief that all existing things are in some sense divine. So you know how Hindus say everything is divine, right? Everything is auspicious. And monism, belief that only one being exists. So this may also somehow point towards Advaita if one does not look very carefully. And at least one thing is for sure, that compared to monotheism and polytheism, pantheism and monism are a lot closer. You know, there's a lot of fineness in these philosophies. Advaita accepts the premise of pantheism of attributing divinity to all of existence, and of monism concerning the non-dual reality being one without a second. But both models fail to explain the nature of the jiva, jagat, ishvara, bandha, moksha, and sadhana, nor do they explain the various orders of reality. So if people are not aware, when one is doing Purva-Paksha, debates and all with other traditions, we always invoke 6 questions. What is the nature of the self? What is the nature of the Jagat? What is the nature of Ishvara or the lack of Ishvara? What is the nature of Bandha, which is bondage? What is the nature of Moksha, which is freedom from limitations? And freedom, let's simplify it. And what is the sadhana, the means for this liberation, the means to this moksha? So these 6 questions are debated and argued by the various traditions in our times. And pantheism and monism do not touch upon these points at all, nor do they even explain the nuances of the orders of reality. These are intrinsic components of any darshana necessary to address in order to keep one from having a nihilist view of existence. Vedanta constitutes a fully fleshed out system that not only fills the holes in both models, which are pantheism and monism, but also explaining these additional parameters at great length. So things such as karma, dharma, all of these things have no place in these about to so-called systems. But the Vedas complete the gaps in them, and as well as touch upon some additional things. So any thoughts here? I think we might be going a little fast.
Sanji, I remember one lecture I attended with one of the disciples of Swamiji.
Okay.
He says, when people ask these questions like there's only one God or there's many gods, you guys believe in many gods. So the answer is yes, there is many gods, and your one God is included in that. So it doesn't really need to explain. The person who believes in it says one God, only that person needs to explain what is that one God.
Yeah.
The person, if you're trying to say that we believe Hindus in many gods, we don't need to explain much because your God is included in that many gods. So you be happy.
Very true. In fact, let me tell you a joke that Pujya Swamiji stated.
Yeah, yeah.
So one day Pujya Swamiji was traveling by train. I may get the details perhaps wrong, but the general gist of it is this. So he was traveling on a train, and one of these missionary types accosted him, right? So he said that, oh, you believe in so many gods, right? So imagine a situation that the missionary type put forward the situation to Pujya Swamiji. That imagine that there's a guy in France and he's sinking or he's whatever drowning in a lake, and now your Hindu guy, suppose he's a Hindu and he starts praying that, oh Rama, come and save me. So Ram Bhagwan will come and rush and he'll save him, but the guy will get impatient, and before Ram Bhagwan comes, he'll say, oh Ganesha, save me. So poor Ram will be disappointed. Ganesha will come to save him, and then Ganesha is taking some time, and then he'll say, oh Krishna, come save me. So poor Ganesha will have to go away and Krishna will have to come. And then he's still impatient, so he says, "Oh, Shiva, save me." So all of these people come, but he gets so tired that they're all conflicted, and he drowns and he dies. But he says, now imagine a Christian. All the Christian has to say is, "Oh, Jesus, come save me," and then Jesus comes and saves them. So therefore, you Hindus are foolish, and our tradition is superior because you guys are confused. You don't know what you pray to. So Pujya Swamiji gave a brilliant reply. He said that, okay, you gave one example of one human being. There are millions of them. There's one guy drowning in France. There's another guy drowning in Brazil. There's a third guy drowning in Scandinavia. There's a fourth guy drowning in India. There are like 50, 60, 100 dozen people drowning everywhere, all over the world. Jesus can only save one of them, the rest will drown. But we have like 330 crore gods to save all of these people. So at least our people are safe. You guys will have to let go of all the other lives. So the point is that obviously this answer is not correct. Just see, when a person uses kutarka, which is stupid false logic with you, you have to respond back in an equally funny way. They don't deserve an actual answer. You can't say that, oh, Ishvara is the Adhisthana and Ishvara is the Upadana Karana, Nimitta Karana, all of these. You can't do these things. You have to respond to them in like. You have to be just as funny and just as ridiculous as them, but you have to use their logic and turn it on themselves. And so the only answer to Kutarka is something funny and witty like this. And so you have to be witty with these people. And that is what Pujya Swamiji has taught us very well. That
So here is my suggestion.
But we do it in a classy, witty fashion.
Yeah. So here is my suggestion, Prashantji. We really enjoyed these classes every day, but let's keep it a little bit like what Swamiji used to do it. His lecture of 1.5 hours is full of jokes and full of knowledge. So if you could start cracking some jokes, I think that will make people more lighter. It will be nicer to keep going that way, just a little change, because I think today I'm enjoying it, the way you're taking it. That's good. I enjoy every time.
I agree with you.
I'm not saying I don't enjoy other days, but I'm saying I really admire the sense of humor what Pujya Swamiji had. Oh my God, can't even explain how quickly. And I remember the incidents when in Auckland listening his lecture, and he's on the dais, and he's having all those big lights and lamps totally focusing him, and he's not able to even open his eyes. Now, how very humorously he said a message to shut off those lights and make him at least sit comfortably. That was admirable. I mean, Swamiji had country.
Pujya Swamiji is inimitable. His brilliance, his humor, his knowledge. One can only hope to be like a very poor copy of it. And if we can even succeed like 1% of what Pujya Swamiji was, that would be a great achievement. With regards to introduction of humor, I thought that it would keep things light, because usually people, if imagine we are on like word 16 or 15 or 16, and if all of this was done in like one linear repetitive fashion, you would zone out. But a few jokes in between, a few kind of like funny pictures, it helps keep things light.
And he never loses the focus. He's just come to the point straight on.
Yeah.
Back to the point. Straight on.
Yeah.
That's it. Very good. Very good. So let's have it sometimes.
Absolutely.
You can do it. Yeah, Prashant, you can do it.
I can't. Nice. I don't think I can do it, but I can try. Let me put it that way. We can all try to be, poor imitations of Pujya Swamiji someday. But yeah, we'll try. So what I wanted to really convey here is that, and to the point that you also made, usually I felt very reserved because my thing is I strongly believe, and I want to send this message out to people, that Hindus have to be more rooted in their own parampara and their sampradaya, and they need to stop giving too much credence to Western categories, especially Abrahamic ones, because digestion is a very real thing that's happening to us. Yoga is being digested, Bharatanatyam is being digested, Ayurveda is being digested. Everything that we have has been kind of absorbed into the foreign cultures. They have repackaged it and they've sold it back to us in a very, uh, uh, mutilated way. That's the only word I can use for it. So it's good to have these categories. So let's just quickly go through and then we'll have a discussion at the end. So the Purvapakshi says, I give up. What ism are you? And that is the point I'm trying to make right now. Neither of them. That's the whole point. We have to remain rooted in our identities without the compulsive need to categorize ourselves using a Western framework. Therefore, Advaita is Advaita alone, nothing else. Dvaita is Dvaita, Advaita is Advaita. Monism is belief that, Shamubai has asked a question. Monism is a belief that only one being exists. So all that there is only one being, which may sound like Brahman, but at the same time, it does not have all the other systemic, fully fleshed out ideas like karma, dharma, orders of reality, moksha, jiva, ishvara. All of these things are missing. And therefore, monism only roughly, very tangentially touches upon what Advaita says, but not completely. And the same thing applies with pantheism as well. In fact, there's another one. I didn't want to complicate things, but it's called panentheism, not pantheism, but there's one more called panentheism, which is similar, but again, not at all if you dissect it. But it's similar to Vishishtadvaita, where they say that the parts make up the whole. So one may be like, oh, panentheism is Vishishtadvaita, pantheism is Advaita, but it's not, because Advaita is Advaita, Vishishtadvaita is Vishishtadvaita. There's no translation. So let's look at word 14, and we are close to the end, very close. The correct word is Anandam. Can anybody tell me the incorrect word?
Joy.
Close. One more try.
Bliss.
Yes. Bliss. So I want to hear your thoughts on why you think it's not the right word.
Anandam is a feeling. Oh, sorry.
Yes,
you can continue.
Right.
I will follow up afterwards.
Both of you can go in order. Smitaji, you want to go first?
I think bliss is an experience and Anandam is limitless. It's your Sarupa, and bliss is just an experience of an object that you experience.
Very good. Perfect. What about you, Niveditaji?
It was almost the same. Bliss is just it's a limited experience. We make it limited. So Anandam cannot be experienced. It's like
it is you.
Something. It's a state.
It's not a state. If it's a state can change. For example, if you talk about quantum mechanics,
bliss can be taken as a state. Yeah.
Bliss could be, again, like, I don't even give weight to the word, but if one is supposed to use the word, you could say it's a state of the mind. But Anandam is you. Ananda is your Swarupa. It is nothing other than you. But bliss is something that, okay, let's say you're having ice cream. So you'll say, oh, I'm having ice cream bliss. Or let's say you are, on a honeymoon or something. You'll say, oh, I'm having honeymoon bliss. Or you're like on a ship and you're doing that Titanic pose and, you're the king of the world. And you say, oh, I'm in such, blissful mood. But that is not really you. It is just an experience. It is a modification of the mind where the mind is, free of some really strong vasanas at that point. Your vasanas have been subdued and you feel relatively freer and you say, this is bliss. Because think about it. If you are craving for an ice cream and the moment you eat the ice cream, suddenly the vasana subdues, right? It kind of gets put out temporarily. Not obviously it'll come back with greater force possibly, but it gets put out temporarily. And so anytime you say bliss, it's nothing but a state of the mind where sattva is predominant. But at the same time, the Atma, which is the self, is beyond the three gunas. In fact, Anandam is your Swarupa, it is you. And I don't want to get into details because Pujya Swamiji has explained this very well. And I encourage all of you to just Google search Swami Dayananda Saraswati Ji, or maybe the G will not work there on Google. Ananda is not bliss. Just type this out and you will find this article. And let's look at the final word, the correct word. And this is very important because a lot of us over here also make this mistake. The correct word is Harihi Om. What is the incorrect word?
Hari Om.
Exactly. Hari Om is incorrect. So there are different ways to write this Harihi Om in Devanagari. In IAST, you'll see it written Harihi Om with that dot beneath the H. In iTrans, you write it as Harihi Om with the capitalized H. So sometimes you'll see me switch between these styles, whichever I am using at that point. And in Roman letters, you can write it as Harihi Om. But Hari Om is incorrect in any way. There's no Hari Om. A lot of people unfortunately use it. We need to get rid of that personally and encourage others also. So here are a few closing words from Pujaswamiji. We have to use known words in such a way that what cannot be released by the words immediately, what cannot be conveyed by the words immediately, can be conveyed by the handling of the words, and not by simply using them and throwing them about. This is very common in new spiritual circles. Any discipline of knowledge requires to be unfolded by persons who know how to handle words. By pure handling alone, Atma has to be revealed. The true nature of Atma is not a conclusion drawn by words. The word eternal, for instance, sounds like a known word, and therefore a student thinks that he knows Atma, but he has no experience of the eternal. The whole teaching is to make the student understand what eternity is. So you don't just throw about these words, you explain them, you unfold them, you meticulously, very carefully bring a vision of that teaching. The whole vision of Brahman has to be unfolded, and it's a very difficult thing to do. It's a great responsibility that teachers have. Every word which talks about Atma is to be fully unfolded by the teacher along with its meaning, without leaving any misconception in the student's mind. A proper rapport is required from a guru to a qualified disciple, and the unfolding of pramana in accordance with the method adopted by the Shastra by handling words appropriately. As the teacher is unfolding only the student's true nature, the student should be able to see the words come out. That is the teaching. So, on these closing words by Pujya Swamiji, we'll sign off. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.